Hello, I am Prometheus, and this is Book Salads. After reviewing this book, we now have the next one, Red Sky in the Morning by James Gustave Speth. America and the Crisis of Global Environment with a new afterword on climate change. I don't think I read the afterword. Okay, first one on the block. The Paris-based Organization for the Economic Cooperation and Development estimates that its members' carbon dioxide emissions will go up by roughly a third between 1995 and 2020. If there is not a major policy intervention, while the OECD motor vehicles use could rise by almost 40% during the same period, emissions of carbon dioxide outside the OECD are projected to go up by 100%. Growing food demand is expected to increase in areas under cultivation in Africa and Latin America, expanding agriculture further into once forested areas and into fragile lands and semi-arid zones. For this reason and others, other countries outside the OECD projected to lose another 15% of their forests by 2020. It wouldn't be so bad if you could actually make fertilizers cheap. You know, crop rotation. I know the carbon dioxide emissions have gone up, but we haven't died yet. So, that's good. The water crisis is real. If action isn't taken, millions of people will be condemned to premature death. Population growth, pollution, and climate change are conspiring to exacerbate the situation. Over the next 2 decades, the average supply of water per person will drop by a third. Heightened hunger and disease will follow. Humanity's demands for water also threaten natural ecosystems, and many bring nations into conflict that, although they may not lead to war, will test diplomat skills to the limit, the UN report notes, and meet internationally agreed water supply and sanitary targets. For 342,000 additional people will have to be provided with sanitation every day until 2015. That's a lot of people. Well, given the fact that America, where I'm currently living, has had a hard time bringing us supplies of water, that actually might be true. But fresh water wouldn't be an issue if energy was the supply. Why don't you set up one of those wind turbines offshore, and get a desalination plant if wind turbines actually work so well? And then you would solve the water crisis. You just pump in fresh water from the ocean. Well, wouldn't that be wonderful? And you could sell the salt. You'd have sea salt. Sea salt's expensive. Money. Economics. We love it. Governments of well-to-do countries tend to be more capable regulators and managers and can have more revenue for environmental, family planning, and other programs. Do not get me started on family planning. Actually, I will get started on family planning. Family planning is something that should be done by the family it concerns. You take that out of the family it concerns, and guess what you get? Disgruntled people. A lot of them. A lot of them. It's great if you don't want a kid, but say you do want a kid. Or better yet, say you don't want a kid and the government says you need to have a kid. That's a whole mess. But yeah, rich countries tend to have more money to care about the environment than poor countries who just want to make it through the day. You know, not starved, warm. So, alright, let's see what here. Scientists are a cautious lot, by and large, so when the most respected issue... Scientists are a cautious lot, by and large, so when the most respected issue plea for active management of the planet, we should take careful notice. I do not think Vitousek, Vitousek, and others who call for planetary management are suggesting that the uncontrollable planetary experiment we are now running can be made safe through flawless planning, more sophisticated human intervention, or large-scale engineering feats such as seeding the oceans with iron to draw more carbon dioxide out of the air. Didn't they try that in the Barrier Reef? Or Antarctica? Rather than our responsibility to manage ourselves and our impacts on nature in a way that minimizes our interference with the great life support systems of the planet. We know what is driving these global trends. The much-used I-path equation, see environmental impacts as a product of the size of the human population, our affluence, in consumption patterns and the technology we deploy to meet our perceived needs. Each of these is an important driver of deterioration. However, this useful IPAT formulation can obscure in addition to the effects of poverty in the vast and rapidly growing scale of the human enterprises. Regarding this growth, here is what have happened in the past 20 years. Global population went up by 35%, world economic output 75%, global energy use 40%, global meat consumption up 70%, world auto production 45%, global paper use 90%, and advertising globally up 100%. Everything except the advertising I agree with. We have enough ads. For the love of God, stop sending me junk mail and emails. You know how much energy it takes to send an email over those servers? Good grief. Also, scientists are a cautious lot, by and large. Scientists make radical and wacky claims all the time. Now, for the most part, they're shot down fairly quickly with science. But the consensus here was formed fairly quickly, and now any chance to question that consensus is a danger to the planet, and therefore needs to be eliminated. Am I the only one who has danger signs going off there? I don't know. I just don't like it when I'm not allowed to question something at its absolute base. Implications of all this are profound. We have entered the end game of our traditional historical relationship with the natural world. The current natural conservation campaign has an appropriate name. They are seeking to protect the last great places. We are in a race to the finish. Soon, metaphorically speaking, whatever is not protected will be paved. Yeah, that's unfortunately true. For biologists Pym and Raven, the past loss of half the tropical forest will likely cost us 15% of the species there. Comparable rates of deforestation in the future would lead to much greater loss. More generally, attacks on the environment of many types will be increasing. Consequently, whatever slack nature once cut us is gone. Yes, I do not like deforestation. I would prefer the forest to be there, but if it's the question between forests and the improvement of people's lives in that area, I'm going to go with the people. Chapter 2, Lost in Eden. Among the far-reaching provisions this lacked... but the year after Congress passed the Clean Water Act of 1972, it also passed a piece of legislation exceptional in its scope and audacity, the Endangered Species Act. Among its far-reaching provisions, this act made it unlawful for anybody to collect, kill, or otherwise harm any animal that was in danger of extinction, even on his or her own property. Suddenly, animals have rights, at least the right to survival as a species. Well, I think that should definitely be true on things like federal land. You shouldn't go on federal land and hunt these kinds of creatures. If I have an eagle, a bald-headed eagle, that's hunting my chickens on my property, I don't really think I'm going to care if it's my national bird or not. It's an emu. It's a pest, and it needs to be eliminated. Or captured and sent somewhere else. Away from my chickens. That's just my personal opinion on it. So, you're causing economic harm for the benefit of animals at the cost of humans. Americans can afford that kind of expense sometimes. Other people in the world don't have that kind of luxury. One process ongoing in the 1980s that will take millions of years to correct is the loss of genetic species diversity by the deforestation of natural habitats. This is the folly of our descendants, are least likely to forgive us. Okay. Yeah, genetic diversity is an important thing, but we still have 8 million unique species on the planet or something in that range, and those are just the ones we know about. There are probably more, as we all know, we discover more every day. Also, the Indian human population has a limited genetic scope, and they seem to be doing fairly well. I just think that you underestimate the ability of plants to live, even with genetically limited resources. More genetics? Yeah, good. yes, I would prefer to save it as much as possible, but I don't think it's quite as big as an issue as stated here. Life will find a way, somehow. Okay, yet the web of life is fraying. Quote, at this moment, in all nations, rich and poor, people are experiencing the effects of the ecosystem decline in one guise or another. Water shortages in Punjab, India. Oh, hey. Soil erosion in Tuva, Russia. Fish kills off the North Carolina in the United States. Landslides in the deforested slopes of Honduras. Fires in the distributed forests of Borneo, Sumatra, and Indonesia. Many now believe that a strong back on which to put the case for conserving biodiversity is ecosystem services. Okay, mudslides are poor land management. Obviously, you should not cut down a lot of trees. Forest fires are a result of dense brush, at least here in America anyway, undergrowth that is yet to been cut out from the forest. Fish kills off the coast of North Carolina. I don't know anything about that. If it's due to pollution from an industrial plant, yeah, that should probably be fixed. Because something that kills a fish could probably kill a human, but maybe not. Who knows? But that should definitely be something looked into. But other than that, I don't understand why the web of life is fraying. It's a few threads. A wormwood derivative is being tested on breast cancer with promising results, and a tree in Argentina has yielded compounds that appears to attack the AIDS virus. Most plants and coral species has not yet been tested for their medicinal properties. That's weird. But yes, great. You're using holistic medicine. Wonderful. It would be best if you stopped cutting down forests, but the reason why people are cutting down forests is because A, they don't have enough energy. Give them the energy, and they'll stop caring what's in the forest. I'm just saying. I mean, it's kind of the reason why in urban farming, you know, the growing in buildings, that's why it's not popular. It's because you need a lot of energy to keep those lights on. So, more energy. Find more energy. And no, not solar panels. Not solar panels or wind turbines. Plants don't grow in the dark unless we're talking about mushrooms. 90% of the calories we eat come from 80 plant species domesticated from the wild. The wild relatives of these species are still in reservoirs of genetic material that can be useful in disease and pest resistance, in developing more resilient varieties in other ways. Yeah, that sounds good, but I don't quite understand this, because potatoes were a wild species, and as far as I know, wild potatoes are still nightshades that are very poisonous. Same with tomatoes. So, can a wild tomato actually be used to cross-pollinate with a natural tomato, so you don't have to worry about the poison getting back into the plant, making it toxic for humans? I don't know. But yeah, that would be wonderful. And yes, always look to nature. Nature seems to have come up to some wonderful things, or if you're like me, God came up with some wonderful things for us to see, and it's just better to look at nature and figure out what they built first and move on from there. Why I felt the need to add that? Water withdrawals climbed sixfold in the 20th century, twice the rate of population growth, and the trend continues. Freshwater withdrawals for irrigation and other purposes. Oh, this was withdrawals from rivers, by the way. I felt that important. Are estimated to grow by 40% by 2020, with 40% of the world's people already living in countries that suffer from serious water shortages. The prognosis for freshwater habitat is not good. The following rivers no longer reach the sea in the dry season: Colorado, Yellow, Ganges, Nile, Syria, Sardaya, and Amud. I cannot pronounce those names. Yeah. Fresh water. It would be nice if we could stop using rivers for fresh water and, you know, really cheap sources of energy for desalination. Over-harvesting is one of the most serious threats to marine fishery, including cod, bluefin tuna, Atlantic halibut, salmon. Current logging rates threaten mahogany. The global market for birds and other wildlife is about $10 billion a year, and many species are taken at unsustainable rates. A fourth of the trade in wildlife relies on illegal poaching. Well, if a fourth of a $10 billion industry requires an illegal part of it, how do you plan on regulating something that doesn't follow the law to begin with? This is kind of the issue with gun control here in America. Supposedly there are a bunch of mysterious ghost guns floating around in the sewers of Los Angeles or whatever. Well, if they're illegal guns that nobody knows where they come from, how do you plan on regulating something? And the people most likely to use these guns are criminals. Criminal, quite literally the definition of not following the law. If poachers follow the law, well then that'd be great, except I don't think poaching and law-abiding citizen quite goes together. Yeah, it would be nice if we could stop overfishing this stuff. I do agree with that to some extent. But you also have to figure out how to fill that marketplace economically so you don't have a bunch of hungry people out of jobs. Hungry people without jobs is not a good situation for any government. Ozone depletion, the weakening of the Earth's stratospheric ozone shield caused by the chlorofluorocarbons and other chemicals, affect biodiversity through the influence of increased ultraviolet radiation reaching Earth's surface. Ultraviolet B radiation affects plant growth, form, and biomass allocation. It can change the competition balance in ecosystems, and it can reduce the production of marine phytoplankton. Last time I checked, the ozone depletion problem pretty much fixed itself. Wonderful thing about ultraviolet rays hitting Earth is that they produce ozone, and ultraviolet B radiation, if I remember correctly, does affect plant growth. It makes them grow faster and somewhat healthier. It's a weird effect. I also think it's used in human research. Somebody came up with this weird thing where they put somebody under a low-powered ultraviolet light, and they grew their cells faster in their wound. I don't know if that was true, but I do know that certain types of ultraviolet radiation are not completely bad so long as the energy levels are kept low enough. I'm out of time.